The Mississippi River, wide, endless, and eternal. A river that has carried explorers, settlers, traders, and travelers for centuries. A river filled with history, legends, and secrets. But beneath its current lies something darker. A mystery that has haunted communities up and down its banks, the unexplained disappearances of those who enter its shadow. For decades, men and women have walked along its waters, only to vanish without a trace. Some are found days later, their bodies recovered with little explanation. Others are never found at all. The official word? Accidental drownings. But the pattern is too strange, too consistent, too unsettling to ignore. Healthy, young men vanishing after nights out. Groups of friends split by a moment of absence, never to reunite. Families left with questions that no authority dares to answer. The Mississippi is more than just water. It is a presence. It is a force. Some say the river is alive, choosing who it takes. Others whisper about cults, secret societies, or even serial killers hiding in the chaos of night. Then there are those who believe something unexplainable, something beyond science, lurks beneath the surface, waiting for its next victim. Tonight, we're not just exploring a crime. We're unraveling a mystery. A mystery that blurs the line between fact and folklore, reality and legend. As you listen, ask yourself, what is it about this river that draws people in and never lets them go? Over the course of this journey, we'll follow chilling patterns, eerie coincidences, and the haunting words of loved ones left behind. We'll explore theories, some grounded in logic, others veering into the supernatural. But each theory has one thing in common: they all attempt to answer the question the Mississippi has never spoken aloud: why here? Why now? Why them? Welcome to the Silent River, mysteries that vanished beneath the Mississippi River, a giant of American history. Stretching over 2,300 miles, it weaves through 10 states, shaping lives, cultures, and economies. It has been called the backbone of America, a river of power, beauty, and resilience. But behind its calm surface lies another story, one that few talk about openly. A story of shadows, silence, and unanswered questions. For decades, people have vanished along this river: students, workers, travelers, and strangers, some found days later, others never seen again. Were these accidents? Tragic drownings? Or is there something more sinister at work beneath the surface of America's most iconic river? This is not one disappearance. Not even two. This is a pattern that stretches across time and states, leaving families in grief and communities searching for answers. From college towns to small river cities, the Mississippi has carried away more than water, it has carried away people, and with them, the truth. In this documentary, we will uncover the stories behind these vanishings, explore theories from police, families, and investigators, and ask the question: what secrets does the silent river keep hidden in its depths? This is part 1. Welcome to the mystery of the Silent River. The river's dark reputation. The Mississippi River has always been more than a body of water. It is a force, a living presence. To Native American tribes, it was sacred. To settlers, it was opportunity. To writers like Mark Twain, it became a symbol of freedom, danger, and destiny. But from the very beginning, the river carried with it a darker reputation. Floods destroyed towns. Storms swallowed ships. Bodies surfaced with no names, no histories, and no one to claim them. In the 1800s, the Mississippi was infamous for crime. Pirates lurked in river towns. Murders were common, and the river often became the perfect place to hide evidence. If someone went missing, the water usually told no stories. Over time, legends began to form. Tales of spirits haunting the riverbanks, whispers of cursed stretches where boats capsized again and again, and stories of men who stepped into the night air, never to be seen again. But these weren't just legends. They were warnings. Because generation after generation, the river's dark reputation was reinforced, not by folklore, but by fact. Too many who disappeared near its waters never came home. Some call it coincidence. Others believe the river itself is to blame: unpredictable currents, dangerous drop-offs, and icy waters that claim lives without mercy. Yet, in the last 50 years, the disappearances began to look less like accidents, and more like something calculated. The Mississippi was once feared for its floods. Now, it is feared for its silence. Silence about the lives it has taken, and the mysteries it has left behind. Across the Midwest, towns along the Mississippi thrive on their universities. Thousands of students live, study, and celebrate in riverfront cities like Minneapolis, La Crosse, and Dubuque. But beneath the energy of campus life, an unsettling pattern has emerged. Year after year, healthy, athletic young men, often after a night out with friends, vanish. Their last known locations? Just blocks away from the river. Their bodies are sometimes recovered days, even weeks later, pulled from the Mississippi. And while officials often call these accidents drownings after too much alcohol, families and investigators see something else. A pattern too precise to ignore. One of the most chilling theories to emerge is known as the smiley face killer theory. Retired detectives claim that dozens of these drownings were not accidents at all, but murders, connected by strange graffiti, a smiley face, found near many of the sites. Authorities have never officially confirmed this theory. Many police departments dismiss it as coincidence. But for families of the victims, the similarities are too strong to ignore. They were sons, brothers, friends, men with promising futures. Their final moments remain a mystery. Were they lured? Followed? Or simply unlucky? Each case seems to blur the line between tragedy and crime. As we look deeper into the student disappearances along the river, one truth becomes clear: whether accident or something darker, the Mississippi has become a graveyard for far too many young lives. But college towns are only one piece of the puzzle. Beyond the campuses, the river's silence grows louder. Ordinary men and women, travelers and workers, they too have vanished into its depths. At first glance, the cases may seem isolated. A student after a night of drinking. A worker heading home. A traveler passing through town. But when we step back, a larger picture begins to emerge. Victims are most often men between the ages of 18 and 40. Many are physically fit, intelligent, and have no history of mental illness. Most vanish at night after leaving a party, a bar, or a gathering near the water. Their disappearances almost always follow a familiar timeline. They are reported missing in the late hours. Search efforts begin. Then, days or weeks later, their bodies surface downstream, often with no signs of struggle that can be clearly proven. And then there is the timing. A disturbing number of these disappearances occur on weekends, often in cold weather months, and in areas where the nightlife scene thrives. patterns also exist in geography. Many vanishings happen within just a few blocks of the river, as if the water itself is a magnet, pulling them in. But others believe it's not the river that draws them, it's someone leading them there. For families and independent investigators, these similarities cannot be coincidence. Too many men. Too many weekends. Too many riverside towns telling the same story. Some believe these are serial crimes, carefully staged to look like accidents. Others point to the possibility of organized groups, predators who know how to hunt in the shadows and leave behind almost nothing. Whatever the truth may be, the patterns raise chilling questions. Questions that law enforcement has struggled to answer, or, some claim, has chosen to ignore. To understand the resistance and controversy surrounding these cases, we must turn to the official story and why police often call these tragedies accidents, even when the evidence feels far from simple. When a body is recovered from the Mississippi, the official explanation often comes quickly. Police reports and press releases point to the same conclusions: alcohol, cold weather, and dangerous waters. Investigators note that many victims were last seen leaving bars or parties. Some were intoxicated. In freezing temperatures, disorientation can set in quickly. A wrong turn toward the river, and tragedy follows. On paper, these explanations make sense. The Mississippi is vast, unpredictable, and unforgiving. Each year, hundreds of drownings are reported across the United States. But for families of the missing, the official story often feels incomplete, even dismissive. Parents point out their sons were strong swimmers. Friends argue they weren't nearly as intoxicated as reports suggested. Some bodies show injuries that don't fully match a simple drowning. And in other cases, shoes neatly removed, phones carefully placed, details suggest intent, or something more. Then there is the question of resources. Many families feel investigations end too quickly. That once a body is recovered, police close the file without asking why it happened or whether someone else may be responsible. For grieving parents, siblings, and friends, these unanswered questions cut deeper than the loss itself. Was this really an accident? Or is the official story a convenient way to avoid facing something far more disturbing? And if these deaths are more than just accidents, then we must ask, why would officials downplay them? Is it lack of evidence, lack of resources, or something they do not want us to see? To uncover this, we need to explore the theories, the whispers of serial killers, organized groups, and predators that stalk the river's edge. Theories dismissed by some, but believed by many. For years, whispers of something darker have surrounded these disappearances. Too many young men, too many riverside towns, too many similarities. The conclusion some investigators reached was chilling: these are not accidents, but murders. The most infamous of these ideas is known as the smiley face killer theory. Retired New York detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte believed the drownings of dozens of young men across the Midwest were the work of a group of killers, organized, calculated, and leaving behind their calling card, a smiley face painted near the scenes. The theory suggests these men were targeted, drugged, abducted, and then disposed of in the river to make their deaths appear accidental. According to Gannon, more than 40 cases shared too many coincidences to be dismissed. Authorities, however, have never endorsed this idea. The FBI reviewed the theory in 2008 and stated they found no evidence of a serial killer network. Local police departments often point back to alcohol, cold nights, and missteps near the water. Yet for families, the explanations feel too neat. If these are only accidents, why are the victims so similar? Why do these drownings keep happening in the same way, in the same places, year after year? And if there is truth in the theory, if predators are out there, stalking nightlife scenes near the river, then it would mean these men are not just victims of bad luck, but prey in a hunt that has gone unnoticed for decades. But serial killers are not the only explanation. Others believe these deaths may be linked to hidden networks, organized groups with motives darker than we dare to imagine. The Mississippi has always been a lifeline for commerce. Barges, cargo, and industry flow up and down its waters. But behind the scenes, it has also been a corridor for crime. Smuggling, drugs, and trafficking have thrived along its hidden channels. Some investigators believe these disappearances may not be the work of lone killers at all, but of organized groups who know how to operate in silence. Groups that use the river as both a weapon and a grave. There are whispers of trafficking rings, networks that prey on young men leaving bars or traveling alone. Some theories claim victims were abducted, used, and then discarded into the river to erase evidence. Then there are the cult theories. In the late 1980s and 1990s, law enforcement in several states quietly tracked rumors of ritual groups operating near the river, groups that targeted vulnerable men for reasons never fully explained. Though no direct evidence was ever confirmed, the timing of some disappearances seemed to overlap with these whispers. Most experts dismiss these stories as conspiracy theories, exaggerations born from fear. But families, left without answers, sometimes believe the unbelievable, because every other explanation has failed them. Whether organized crime, trafficking, or cults, the theories share one thing in common: the idea that these men were not lost to the river by chance. They were chosen. But theories are only part of the story. To uncover the truth, we must return to the families, the mothers and fathers who have fought tirelessly, refusing to let their loved ones become just another name lost to the Mississippi. Behind every case is a family left shattered. For them, the Mississippi is no longer a symbol of beauty or strength, it is a wound that will never fully heal. These families live with the unthinkable, the phone call in the night, the agonizing search, and finally, the devastating discovery that their loved one has been found in the water. Yet even then, there is no peace. Only questions. For many, the hardest part is not the loss itself, but the lack of answers. The official explanations often feel too quick, too simple. Parents are told their sons were drunk, careless, unlucky. But families who knew them don't believe that. So they fight back. They write letters. They march. They create online forums and advocacy groups. They share their stories with journalists, hoping someone, somewhere, will connect the dots that officials refuse to see. Some families have become investigators themselves. They've gathered evidence, hired private detectives, and pushed for independent autopsies. Their work has revealed inconsistencies, bruises unexplained, toxicology reports questioned, timelines that don't make sense. For them, the fight is not just about their sons. It is about preventing another family from standing at a riverbank, waiting for answers that may never come. Their voices are powerful. They demand truth. And in doing so, they keep the memory of their loved ones alive, refusing to let them vanish in silence. But families are not alone. Over the years, journalists and independent investigators have stepped in, chasing leads and uncovering connections that might otherwise remain buried. When families found no comfort in official reports, others stepped in. Journalists, podcasters, and private investigators began to follow the trail, and what they discovered has cast a long shadow over the Mississippi. Some journalists noticed a troubling pattern. The same demographics. The same circumstances. The same river. One reporter described it as a silent epidemic hidden in plain sight. Podcasters amplified the story. Their voices reached thousands, and listeners began connecting their own dots. Suddenly, these cases weren't isolated tragedies, they were a collective mystery. Private investigators also joined the search. They spoke with bar staff, re-examined autopsies, and reviewed security footage. In one case, a private detective revealed bruising on a victim that suggested a struggle, a detail the original report had overlooked. Others used data. They mapped each disappearance along the Mississippi, drawing eerie clusters where victims had gone missing. The similarities were undeniable. But whether this pointed to coincidence or conspiracy was a question no one could easily answer. These independent efforts brought the story into the national spotlight. Yet they also raised new tensions. Law enforcement dismissed much of the work, labeling it speculation. But to grieving families, these journalists and investigators were heroes, the only ones willing to dig deeper. The more they uncovered, the stranger the picture became. Patterns. Inconsistencies. Stories that didn't add up. And most disturbing of all, whispers that these deaths might not be accidents at all. In the next chapter, we follow the theories that have emerged. From tragic coincidence to something far more sinister. For years, debate has raged. Are these tragedies merely coincidence, or is there something far more sinister beneath the surface of the Mississippi? On one hand, there are those who argue it's simple misfortune. A dangerous mix of alcohol, late nights, and treacherous waters. Each case, they say, is tragic but not connected. Drownings happen, especially in cities where rivers cut through nightlife districts. But others see a pattern too sharp to ignore. Victims often fit the same profile: young men, often athletic, intelligent, with promising futures. They vanish after nights out, only to be found in rivers days or weeks later. The odds of this happening again and again, some argue, are just too unlikely. And then there are the theories. Some suggest organized foul play, predators targeting victims in nightlife areas. Others whisper about secret groups, a so-called network of killers who use the river as their dumping ground. Still more believe these are cover-ups, crimes dismissed as accidents to keep fear from spreading. The most infamous theory is known as the smiley face killers hypothesis, the idea that a coordinated group may be responsible for dozens of drownings across the U.S., with the Mississippi as one of its central hunting grounds. Of course, not everyone believes. Critics argue the evidence is circumstantial at best. The human mind is wired to see patterns, even where none exist. And in tragedies like these, conspiracy can feel like the only way to make sense of senseless loss. So, is it coincidence? Or conspiracy? The truth, for now, lies somewhere in the shadows, just like the Mississippi itself. In the next chapter, we'll take a closer look at one of the most disturbing theories of all, the so-called smiley face killers. In 2008, two retired New York City detectives dropped a bombshell. They claimed that dozens of drowning deaths across the United States weren't accidents at all, but the work of a coordinated group of killers. they called it the smiley face killer theory. The name comes from graffiti, a simple smiley face often found near the sites where victims were pulled from rivers. To detectives Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, this was no coincidence. They believed the symbol was a calling card, left behind like a twisted signature. The theory suggests that a nationwide network of killers targets young men, usually college-aged, athletic, and high-achieving. After a night out, the victims are abducted, killed, and then dumped into nearby rivers. The smiley face graffiti is left as a chilling marker of the crime. But is it true? Critics argue the evidence is weak. Smiley face graffiti is one of the most common tags in the world. And drownings, sadly, are also common. Law enforcement across multiple states has largely dismissed the theory, calling it a conspiracy fueled by grief and fear. Yet, the similarities are disturbing. Victims vanish in eerily similar circumstances. Friends report sudden disappearances just outside bars. Phones are found smashed. Bodies often show signs of struggled bruising, marks, details sometimes overlooked in official reports. To families, the smiley face killer theory isn't just plausible, it's the only explanation that fits. They believe their sons were targeted, stalked, and silenced, their deaths staged as accidents to hide the truth. Whether real or imagined, the smiley face killer theory has taken hold in the public imagination. Documentaries, podcasts, and books have spread the idea far and wide. And for many, the Mississippi River has become central to this chilling narrative. In the next chapter, we go beyond the theory into the science. What do forensic experts and water recovery specialists say about these cases? Do the rivers themselves hold answers, or do they only deepen the mystery? Beyond theories and speculation, there is the science. Forensic experts, water recovery specialists, and pathologists have spent years studying these cases. And their findings reveal both the dangers of rivers and the mysteries they continue to conceal. The Mississippi is not just any river. It is powerful, unpredictable, and deadly. Its currents can sweep away even the strongest swimmer. Visibility beneath the surface is near zero. For search and recovery teams, it is like hunting in the dark. Experts explain that bodies in water often behave differently than expected. Depending on temperature, clothing, and current, a body may sink, drift for miles, or resurface days, even weeks later. For investigators, this complicates time of death, location, and cause. Autopsies in many of these cases list drowning as the cause of death. But families and independent investigators point to anomalies, marks on wrists that look like bindings, unexplained bruises, or low alcohol levels inconsistent with police conclusions. Dr. Cyril Wecht, one of America's most respected forensic pathologists, has publicly questioned some of these cases. He argues that several deaths show evidence of foul play, evidence overlooked or ignored by official reports. Other forensic specialists counter that injuries seen on recovered bodies can easily result from currents, rocks, or time underwater. In their view, what looks like foul play may be nothing more than the river itself. The science, then, does not close the case, it deepens the divide. Do these bodies tell the story of tragic accidents, or are they silent witnesses to crimes staged as drownings? And if the science cannot answer the questions, some turn to the psychology. Who could commit such acts, and why? In the next chapter, we explore the criminal mind and the profiles of predators who may be hiding in plain sight. If the Mississippi River deaths are not coincidences, then someone or perhaps several people are behind them. But who could commit such crimes? And what kind of mind would it take to turn a river into a graveyard? Criminal profilers suggest that if foul play is involved, the suspect would fit the pattern of a highly organized predator. Someone intelligent, patient, and skilled at manipulation. These victims, after all, were not taken in the middle of the day, they vanished in the chaos of nightlife, where distractions are everywhere. Some psychologists believe the killer or killers may derive power not only from the act itself, but from the mystery that follows. The lack of resolution, the unanswered questions, become part of their satisfaction. In terms of motive, theories vary. Some experts suggest thrill-seeking killers who see themselves as hunters, choosing their targets with precision. Others point to a more ritualistic drive, killings meant to send a message, or to bind members of a group together in secrecy. The FBI has long studied serial predators who target strangers. They note that such killers often operate in areas of high transience, highways, rivers, college towns. Places where victims can disappear without immediate notice. The Mississippi, running through dozens of cities, fits that profile perfectly. And if more than one person is involved, as the smiley face theory suggests, the psychology becomes even darker. Group killings are rare, but when they occur, they rely on secrecy, ritual, and shared obsession. It would mean not just a predator, but a brotherhood of predators. Whether a lone killer, a group, or simply the merciless randomness of chance, the psychology behind the Mississippi deaths leaves a haunting truth: someone, somewhere, may be hunting. Or, perhaps no one is. And that is what makes the mystery so terrifying. In our final chapter, we return to the people left behind, the families, the communities, and the questions that may never be answered. The Mississippi has carried away lives, and perhaps, the truth itself. The Mississippi has been called the backbone of America. A river of history, of commerce, of culture. But for some, it has become something else entirely, a place of loss, of unanswered questions, of grief that runs as deep as the water itself. Across cities and towns along its banks, families still wait for answers. Each disappearance leaves an empty chair at the table. Each recovery from the water brings both closure and more questions. The legacy of the Mississippi deaths is not just tragedy. It is also resilience. Families have formed support networks. Advocates continue to push for investigations. Journalists and podcasters keep the cases alive in the public mind. And strangers, people who never knew the victims, carry their stories forward. Yet the river keeps its secrets. Science, psychology, theory, none have unlocked the full truth. Perhaps these were accidents. Perhaps something darker flows beneath the surface. Perhaps both. What we know for certain is that the Mississippi has become more than just a river. It has become a graveyard of mysteries. For the families, for the investigators, and for those who will one day walk along its banks unaware of what happened here, the Mississippi remains a question without an answer. Silent. Watching. Carrying its secrets into the shadows. The Mississippi River has long been a place of both beauty and danger. To understand the vanishings tied to it, we must first look at the psychology of disappearance. Why do people, often young, often healthy, often seemingly happy, vanish near water? Psychologists suggest that some cases may be linked to what's known as situational vulnerability. Picture this: a young man leaving a bar late at night. He's had too much to drink, his senses dulled, his awareness limited. The riverbank becomes a silent predator, no fences, no warnings, no resistance. An accidental slip can mean tragedy. But the question is, why does this pattern repeat again and again across states, across years? If alcohol or missteps were the only explanation, surely we'd see the same pattern in every city, on every river. Yet, we don't. The Mississippi cases stand out, clustered, unnervingly similar. Some experts propose psychogenic fugue, a rare mental state where individuals suddenly lose their identity, wander off, sometimes never returning. Could some victims have fallen into such states, their lives unraveling quietly before dissolving into the river's current? Possibly. But again, the families argue this doesn't explain the sheer consistency. Too many young men. Too many students. Too many last sightings by the water. Then there's the darker psychological theory, that of coercion or manipulation. Could predators be skilled at identifying vulnerable victims? Could they be lured, tricked, or even drugged before being led to the river? Some survivors in nearby cities have described moments where they felt suddenly dizzy, disoriented, as though something had been slipped into their drinks. Not all of them ended in disappearance, but enough raised suspicion. The psychology of disappearance is not only about the victims, it's about the families too. For every case, there is a mother replaying her last conversation, a father blaming himself for not protecting his child, siblings who refuse to accept accident as a final explanation. The human brain craves closure. And in the absence of answers, it builds scenarios, sometimes hopeful, often nightmarish. So yes, psychology may explain a few of these cases. Drunken mistakes. Disorientation. Sudden, rare mental breaks. But when dozens of nearly identical stories pile up, all pointing back to the Mississippi, the psychological explanation begins to feel less like truth and more like a convenient excuse. And that leads us to the larger, unsettling question: if the psychology of disappearance can't account for everything, then what or who is truly at work along the river? For every disappearance along the Mississippi River, there are dozens of unanswered questions. But hidden among these dark stories are the voices of the almost victims, survivors who escaped, witnesses who saw something, and locals who sensed danger before tragedy struck. Their accounts may be the most important clues we have. Take, for instance, the story of Michael, a college student from Iowa. After a late night with friends, he started his walk home along the riverfront. He later told investigators that a stranger followed him for nearly 3 blocks, keeping pace in the shadows. Michael felt uneasy, but before he could react, the figure suddenly vanished into an alleyway. Hours later, another young man, same age, same build, same last known path, was reported missing. His body was found in the river 3 days later. Then there's the case of Angela, a young woman jogging near the river in the early morning hours. She swore she heard screams, faint but urgent, coming from the water. When she called for help, police conducted a brief search but found nothing. Weeks later, another disappearance was logged in the very same area. Was Angela hearing the desperate cries of someone moments away from vanishing? Some witnesses report mysterious figures, strangers hanging around the riverbanks with no clear purpose. One fisherman recalled seeing a group of men watching silently as a young student stumbled along the edge of the water. When asked about it later, police said no suspects were ever questioned. The fisherman insists that night still haunts him. It was like they were waiting for something to happen. There are also stories of survivors who describe strange blackouts. A few young men reported waking up soaked, miles from where they had last been seen, with no memory of how they ended up near the river. One survivor, Kevin, recalled leaving a bar with friends, only to remember nothing until waking up on a muddy bank at sunrise. His clothes were torn, his shoes missing. Police ruled it an accident. Kevin remains convinced that someone tried to drag him into the water, but he somehow escaped. These near-miss accounts suggest a chilling possibility that not all of these vanishings are chance drownings. That some victims may have been targeted, stalked, drugged, or coerced. That predators may be exploiting the cover of night, the vulnerability of intoxication, and the silence of the river to carry out their crimes. But here lies the tragedy: eyewitness testimonies are often dismissed. Without hard evidence, without video footage or clear suspects, police tend to write off these accounts as unreliable. Survivors are told they were drunk, disoriented, or simply imagining things. And with that, their stories fade into the same silence that swallows the victims themselves. Still, when you piece these accounts together, a disturbing pattern emerges. Strangers following victims. Sudden blackouts and missing time. Eerie screams in the night. Unexplained groups near the water. One story may be coincidence. 10 stories may be chance. But dozens of similar stories, spanning states and decades, all along the same river? That begins to sound less like accident, and more like a silent predator hiding in plain sight. As we continue this journey down the Mississippi, these voices, the survivors, the near victims, the witnesses who saw what others refused to see, may hold the key to understanding what's really happening along America's silent river. The Mississippi River is often called the lifeblood of America. Stretching more than 2,300 miles, it passes through or borders 10 states, touching countless towns, cities, and communities. For centuries, it has been a symbol of connection, commerce, and culture. But in the dark corners of investigative theory, the Mississippi is seen as something else: the perfect dumping ground. A serial killer's silent accomplice. Criminologists point out that rivers like the Mississippi are what they call transient zones. They move through multiple jurisdictions, meaning that if a body is found, the investigation often becomes complicated. Was the victim abducted in Minnesota, dumped in Iowa, or carried downstream into Missouri? Who has legal authority? Who takes the lead? In many cases, the answer is nobody. Serial killers have long used water as a way to erase evidence. Bodies decompose faster in moving currents, DNA washes away, and toxicology reports often come back inconclusive. A person dumped in the Mississippi may resurface days or weeks later, if at all, stripped of the clues investigators desperately need. One of the most chilling theories surrounding these disappearances is that the river has become a highway for killers, a place where patterns of disappearances can occur without drawing immediate suspicion. Each city blames alcohol. Each jurisdiction closes the case as accidental drowning. But when you connect the dots, the river itself becomes the line that ties them together. Think about this: many of the victims are young men, often in their late teens or 20s, college students, athletes, promising futures cut short. They are last seen leaving bars or social gatherings late at night. They vanish near water. And their bodies, if recovered, show few signs of struggle, often too decomposed to yield answers. This hauntingly mirrors the infamous smiley face killer theory, where dozens of drownings across Midwestern states were suspected to be the work of one or more organized predators using rivers to mask their crimes. While police dismissed much of this theory as conspiracy, independent investigators argue the similarities are far too exact to ignore. The Mississippi, with its vastness and constant movement, would be the perfect stage. A killer could operate in one city, strike again hundreds of miles downstream, and leave investigators chasing shadows. Unlike fixed crime scenes, rivers don't stay still. They wash away footprints, scatter belongings, and move evidence into the depths. Some locals whisper about truck drivers, drifters, or even groups who might use the river as part of their movements, predators hiding in plain sight, exploiting America's most iconic waterway. Could the river itself be their shield? Could its length and lawlessness provide the cover that's kept them hidden for decades? This theory terrifies families, because it suggests their loved ones weren't victims of chance or carelessness. It suggests they were hunted. It suggests that while police wrote accidental drowning on the report, the reality may be far darker. The Mississippi River has been called many things: the father of waters, Old Man River, the backbone of America. But if this theory holds true, it may also be a silent accomplice, a vast, moving graveyard that has hidden the work of predators for generations. And the chilling question remains: if the river is a serial killer's highway, how many more have been lost to its current? And how many more will vanish before someone finally connects the evidence that law enforcement has left scattered along its banks? The media's role in silence. When people go missing, one of the first things families do is turn to the media. They beg reporters, TV anchors, and newspapers to share their loved one's story. Awareness can save lives, after all. Public pressure can force police to act. A photo on the evening news can reach someone who saw something that night. But along the Mississippi, something strange has happened. Despite dozens of similar disappearances, the media coverage has been inconsistent at best and dismissive at worst. Local newspapers may publish a short piece: "Man found in river. Alcohol suspected." A few lines. No follow-up. No in-depth coverage. National media? Silent. Families have noticed. Parents of the missing often say they feel ignored, erased, or minimized. They've stood in front of cameras, pleading for coverage, only to see their child's story reduced to a brief news scroll, overshadowed by lighter, more sensational stories. Why? Why does the media avoid amplifying these cases? Some suggest it's because the pattern is too disturbing. To admit that dozens of young men across states are vanishing in the same way would cause fear, outrage, and demand for answers. It's easier and more profitable to call it accidental drowning and move on. There's also the issue of victim perception. Many of the victims are young men last seen leaving bars. Reporters frame them as careless, intoxicated boys who partied too hard. This creates an unconscious bias. Society feels less sympathy, as though the victims somehow brought it on themselves. Compare this to the national outcry when young women go missing under mysterious circumstances. The media selects which stories become national tragedies and which fade quietly. Then there's the question of control. Some families whisper about pressure from local authorities, towns, or even universities to keep stories quiet. A college town doesn't want a reputation of being unsafe. A city doesn't want tourism or business disrupted by serial predator headlines. In these cases, silence becomes a strategy, a way to protect image rather than people. Independent journalists and podcasters have tried to fill the gap. Small YouTube channels, true crime blogs, and grassroots movements keep these stories alive. But their reach is limited compared to mainstream outlets. And often, by the time their investigations gain traction, years have passed, evidence has decayed, and memories have blurred. One grieving mother once said, "If my son had been rich, famous, or female, his face would have been on every screen in America. Instead, they gave me one article, one sentence, and they called it an accident." The media's silence does more than just hurt families. It shapes public perception. If you never hear about these cases, you never see the pattern. You believe each one is isolated. You trust the accident explanation. And that, in turn, allows the cycle to continue. So we must ask, is the media's silence accidental? Or is it deliberate? A system designed to protect reputations, preserve profits, and keep the public calm while families drown in grief and the river keeps swallowing lives? If the Mississippi is the stage for these tragedies, then the media's silence is the curtain that keeps the audience blind. And until that curtain is lifted, until the cameras shine light on the truth, the river's secrets will remain hidden and more families will learn what it means to scream into the void, unheard. The call for justice and reform. The Mississippi River has carried countless lives, countless stories. But in the shadows of its waters, too many families are left without answers, without justice, without closure. By now, you've seen the pattern. Young men, often healthy, often with bright futures, vanish near the riverbanks. Days later, their bodies are found in the water. Authorities call them accidents. The media stays quiet. And families are left alone, fighting not only grief but disbelief that so many deaths could be written off so easily. At the heart of this story lies a question of justice. What does it mean to pursue justice when the very institutions meant to protect and serve, police, media, even local governments, seem unwilling or unable to acknowledge a deeper truth? Families and advocates are demanding reform. They want independent investigations. Not just local police brushing off cases, but federal or interstate collaboration. The Mississippi runs through multiple states. What if law enforcement worked together, sharing data, patterns, and evidence instead of treating each case as isolated? Better forensic standards. Too many autopsies are rushed. Toxicology reports are incomplete. Evidence is discarded. Families call for updated, uniform procedures so that every body pulled from the river gets a fair, thorough investigation, media accountability. Pressure is growing for news outlets to cover these cases with the gravity they deserve. To stop blaming victims. To stop minimizing lives lost. To treat every disappearance as the tragedy it is, public awareness. Communities are asking for better safety measures near riverbanks, lighting, cameras, patrols, emergency response systems. Small steps, perhaps, but ones that could save lives. But beneath these demands is something larger, a cultural shift. We must stop dismissing certain victims. Stop assuming drunken accidents without proof. Stop silencing families who are crying for help. Because the truth is, these disappearances are not just their problem. They are our problem. The Mississippi has long been called America's river. It shaped towns, trade, and culture. But if we allow its waters to become a graveyard of unanswered questions, what does that say about us? What does that say about justice in America, when dozens of lives can vanish into a river, and society shrugs its shoulders? For reform to happen, pressure must come from us, the people. Every view, every share, every conversation forces these stories into the light. Families need allies, voices loud enough to break the silence. Because silence is what has kept this mystery alive for so long. One father of a missing young man once said, "The police told me my son drowned. I asked them, how do you drown a smile? How do you drown a future? How do you drown all the questions I still don't have answers to?" Justice isn't just about catching someone or naming a culprit. Sometimes, justice is simply demanding the truth. Demanding accountability. Demanding that our institutions value every life equally, regardless of circumstance. The Mississippi story isn't finished. But whether it becomes a story of continued silence or a story of truth, reform, and justice depends on us. So, as we close this chapter, we ask you, don't let these voices fade. Don't let these cases drown in obscurity. Keep asking. Keep pushing. Keep shining a light on the silent river until silence is no longer an option. The Mississippi continues its endless flow, carrying secrets with its current, swallowing voices in its depths. And we are left only with shadows, fragments of stories, unanswered questions, and a lingering chill that something still waits beneath the surface. The truth may never come from the authorities. It may never come from science. But it may live in the connections we make, in the awareness we spread, and in the courage to keep asking questions. If this story has left you with questions, if it stirred your curiosity or unease, don't let it end here. Share this video, like it, and leave your theories in the comments. Maybe the answer lies in one of you. Maybe together, we can uncover what the river keeps hidden. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more stories like this, mysteries that haunt, mysteries that challenge, and mysteries that remind us how thin the line between the known and the unknown truly is. Until next time, keep your eyes open, keep your mind questioning, and remember, some rivers don't just flow with water, they flow with secrets.